Mike from around the world.
Pastor Paul.
I'm sorry. I don't know why my phone, but I seen you right. I couldn't call out and you couldn't call in, so I don't know what's up with that phone.
Yeah, you're something weird happened, Pastor Paul. See if you can explain this.
Okay.
You know that small hum you had a little bit ago,
Yes.
right? I just turned you on. I have a coffee cup that automatically stirs every 10 minutes or so, right?
Okay.
It was off as soon as your that hum came through. The cup was off. It was powered off. It went off, and so did the other cup beside it. It went off at the exact same time you had that hum in your system.
You're saying the hum in my system turned your coffee cups off.
Well, they all turned on at the same time. You had the hum, and the two coffee cups began to stir by themselves. They were totally off, and
What?
they started to stir by themselves. Yeah, at
What?
the exact same time. Yep,
Wow.
that's impossible. By the way, that's impossible. That's impossible.
Well, is it
There is no radio wave that can reach me right now, so that's
That's
impossible.
impossible. So, are we? What are we dealing with here? Are we doing something supernatural here, or are we doing something technologically?
I have
Uh,
well, I'm just
just
put
reporting.
that one in your hat because that took me by surprise.
Okay. Well, that's a new one. But okay, sounds like there's a lot of impossible things happening, Mike. So, where do you want to start? Can we start with Planet X before we go to the balloons? And although I'm wanting to go there so bad, well, let's just start with
Well, let's do it.
Let's go there. Let's start about it. Okay, so you were on last Thursday night. We had shot down the Chinese spy balloon, and you said there's more out there, and yeah, you were right. Okay, so then we shoot down three more objects, unidentified objects. One looked like an octagon, from what we're getting reports. The president of the United States finally spoke about shooting down these four objects and said, well, one was the Chinese balloon. We know about that one. We let it go across the country and shot it down over South Carolina waters. But these next three, Alaska, Canada, and Michigan, Lake Huron, we don't know what they are, but they're not China. So, Mike, if you know it's not China, then how do you know it's not China? I mean, help me understand, what are these, and are there more? What are they, and is there more?
Yeah, there's more, but I think that that's almost one of those backpedaling comments, right?
Right.
We have what's called a deep learning aircraft recognition system. It's artificial intelligence. Okay,
Okay.
deep learning is a neural network across all services. So to not be able to recognize an object is somewhat ludicrous, right? It's very
Okay.
ludicrous. That's just not, it's not possible. The first balloon that came over, that kind of reflects, it's so funny. We had the earthquake in Turkey, correct?
Yep.
And then, of course, as soon as that earthquake happened, the balloons happened,
Yep.
actually, the earthquake happened. Then we started having chemical derailments and explosions in the USA.
Yes.
Right, very strange accidents. All this happening in one big window. Why all in one big window? I don't believe in coincidences,
No.
right?
No.
And then I believe I let some people in on it. The night before they shot that balloon down, the first balloon. Here's what I said. People were talking about that balloon. I said, I just came out and said it. I said they're gonna, as soon as it gets over water, it'll be shot down,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Just threw that out there, and then of course that's exactly what they did. That was a hint. In other words, um, we have a governmental system that is, let's just say, some staging is taking place. We have real problems, yes. In all governments, there's a governmental civil war taking place all across the globe. But Pastor Paul, just to generalize everything, in order to get rid of one system, you have to break down what's holding the older system together. People will begin to turn on some of the procedures and things that they see. So expect instabilities in governmental communications, coordinated activities. You're going to have things like they can't identify an object that's at 60,000 feet. That's crazy,
That's
right?
insane.
That's absolutely crazy. If that were the case, right, missile lock would not work. You have to have an ID for missile lock anyway. So, um, I'll give you another example. China can scan passengers on a train when it's moving by at about 100 to 200 miles an hour. They can scan everybody from a remote building, right? Facial
What?
recognition. So just think about that. We can do the same thing. We can scan on highways, right?
Yeah.
When people drive by on highways, it can scan everybody in every single car. Right, that goes into a system. They really don't do anything with that data, but they can effectively scan everybody and ID everybody just with a snap of a finger. So with that scanning capability, you mean to tell me no satellites have that same scanning capability when we can actually zoom in on a quarter and give you the details and some of the divots that are in the quarter? We can do that from a satellite, but we can't ID a balloon and the
Yeah.
materials.
Yeah.
We have no scanning capabilities. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about these scanning capabilities because if something flies in our airspace or Canada's airspace or any airspace near North America and South America, we can't tell what it is. That's ludicrous. Unfortunately, when they found out that people are gullible on the internet, some of the younger crowd, they don't understand history. They're gullible on the internet. They
Yeah.
don't know about certain things. They haven't researched problems that the USA has had to overcome, so they don't know about the methodologies utilized. They start talking about these subjects like we can't identify this, we can't do this, and we can't do that, and they believe it.
Yep.
So to them, it would almost be like magic for for them to even conceive that we could scan a huge balloon. Right, that thing was not small; it's huge.
Right.
Right. Um, it didn't enter into their minds that we should have a capability to scan it. And so what they do in a generation like this is they will use these ploys, these activities and things like that to play dumb. When they do this, it makes everybody spiral. It causes confusion, and while they work on other areas, right? We
Yep.
still have the month of June and July coming. We have serious celestial issues forming, and the Earth is about to go into a brand new phase of its weather phenomena, very deadly weather. And so while everybody else is concentrating on things they can't really put together because they forget about technology. They forget about deep learning for targeting, right? The improved target acquisition system, ITAS and I-10, and the IEWTPT system, CCMIS system, all these different acronyms that are surrounding identification, military identification of aircraft, objects, birds, animals, everything else, right? They forget about that, or they don't know about that. So the truth is, they know what the objects are. There's no way they're gonna let that cat out the bag, right? It'll take that'll really take a small history lesson for today's social media consumers to
Right.
really get in there and start to believe it, because all you need is one counterintelligence guy to get on social media and say, no, we can't do that, and everybody's like, okay, we can't do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's a new word now. They program people to believe what we cannot do. You remember back before 2015, all of what they said we could do. Remember
Yes,
that?
I remember that.
So anybody who searches the internet when you want the truth, while Google still has it, enter a date from 2007 to 2015 and then search capabilities and things like that. Don't search for 2023, 22, 21 and 19. Don't search those dates or 18. Go back further and then you'll find out what we can do, because all that's been swept under the carpet. And if you search for capabilities of identifying aircraft, the balloon topic is going to pop up. You're not going to find the right information. And this is how they do.
It's
In the
deceptive.
meanwhile,
It's a very.
some of
It's
these objects, China really did have a balloon over us. They
yes.
really did,
They did.
right?
Right.
They're really upset about that too. They're upset about it. Here's what's happening. Here's what's right in people's faces. This first balloon we shot down, China took great offense to it. Number one, they took great offense, right? Uh, and it was the data was captured from that object, right?
Okay.
They kind of snag that data.
Yeah.
Anything that transmits that comes over the USA, that data can be captured. Anything that's scanning, right? Like some of the telemetry satellites that fly over, they map topology and all these. We can see everything about that. We know what they're mapping, what they're capturing, what data went into the system itself. We capture all that, right? It's kind of like getting a snapshot of the signal and then putting that signal together by way of a small supercomputer, and you have all the data they were trying to collect. It's just that simple. It's kind of like if you make a phone call, right?
Yep.
You make a phone call. That signal from that cell phone is going to a tower. The tower coordinates with other towers and another master device with clocking or timing. Then capture all that out of the air, put your phone conversation back together, all this in less than a tenth of a second. Put your phone conversation back together, and they can replay everything you ever said without even having your cell phone. Right? So
Yeah.
there we are.
So if you
These are the
can do that,
capabilities we actually have.
yeah. So if we have these types of capabilities, then why would we not think that we couldn't
There you
know
go.
what these three things flying 50 or 60,000 feet over our head, or even
There you go.
40,000? I mean, that's insanity. It's ludicrous, like you said. It's ludicrous. So,
It is.
so why did the president come out there and try to dummy down the American public? Is this to get us all to say, well, it's probably no big deal? He says it wasn't China. It's probably some kind of research thing. Is this to make us just give up, go away, don't ask no more questions? Is that what?
Sure it is. Because it works. It really does
Yeah, it
work.
does.
If they act like they're confused, right? And this is where you have to look beyond what they're saying. If they start acting confused with information that contradicts, the average person's going to throw the entire subject out. They're going to go to the internet. They're going to read about a couple what they call conspiracy theories, and then all of a sudden the story goes away.
Right.
Just goes away. So that's the way they work things.
So what do you?
In truth, though,
what do you believe, or what is it?
China has a dragon plan.
Okay.
China has a dragon plan. Well, for one thing, not too many people really understand how sophisticated China actually is. They don't need those balloons. Number one, they don't need balloons, right?
No.
They don't need that. They are riding or having these balloons ride streams. They're intercepting. If you think that one balloon was just intercepting information below it, you're wrong in that. What if you look at the satellite towers, where the satellite towers or where the cell phone towers are placed, right?
Okay. Okay.
Just, you have to look at that, and everybody keep in mind that 5G was just put up, and 5G is something that China has been using for a while now. Okay, we're the new kids on the block. That balloon, in relationship to some of these 5G networks, which go right through sensitive military areas, right?
Right.
If you look at that track of the balloon, it's going to follow that, and they wired this 5G system to kind of they kind of match it with some of the natural geomagnetic places on the Earth,
Okay.
which means certain celestial phenomena that we have is going to match that pattern also. So how they set up this 5G is not just random positioning. They had to know about the Earth. They had to know about geomagnetic properties of the Earth. They had to know about celestial properties that are out there affecting the Earth. So all this went into account when they placed these systems for maximum efficiency. And this balloon tracked this 5G system all the way to the East Coast.
Really?
That's what it did. And so if you track a 5G system, forget about phone calls, forget about listening to what people are talking about. You actually begin to hear machine code. That's what you hear, how machines are communicating. And China has an ability to capture, they perfected the art. If they get close to technology, they can snag the data from it very
Okay.
quickly, very quickly. And
So they're doing
because
more
they,
than just looking at our military installations.
oh yeah,
They're
yeah,
looking at
forget about
everything.
yeah, they know where the military installations are. Do you want to know why? Anything an American can look up on the internet, the enemy can see also.
Of course. Right.
Anything. So keep that in mind. So they weren't looking for the information that's readily available on the internet. They were looking for specifics. At the same time, though, we've had some derailments, chemical plants exploding.
Yep.
Just that's not coincidence. It's kind of like that earthquake in Turkey.
Yes.
That stuff is not coincidence. And the earthquake in Turkey is a complex issue. It's not just one thing. That's not what it is.
Well,
It's not just one
let
thing.
me ask you a question on that earthquake, because the 3 days before the earthquake, 9 Western countries closed their consulates: the United States, Netherlands, Switzerland, Sweden, Britain, Germany, Belgium, France, and Italy, all NATO
Yes.
countries. They all closed their consulates due to a security risk. And then 3 days later, the earthquake hits Turkey. 42,000 are dead and probably going to go higher. Did we know? I mean, is there a coincidence here? You said you don't believe in coincidence. Is there something strange going on that 9 nations would close their consulates in a nation that's going to have the worst earthquake? This is the 10th worst earthquake in the history of humanity. Is there something
Yeah,
going
and
on here?
it also happened to hit right where we have missile systems. We have missile systems right above that area, the epicenter of that earthquake. We have,
Wow.
you know, a lot of positioning is taking place up there. We also have underground holding facilities for nuclear weapons. Remember, Turkey, we used to store our nuclear weapons in Turkey.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And it was just when ISIS began their little trek, we took some out. They transported some to undisclosed locations. And so taking all that into account with some of the bug outs that were happening with some of the officials that were over there, so they wouldn't be in that area. Looking at that fault line also, it's not too hard to examine. Plus, we had pulses inbound, right?
Yes, we did. Pulses.
Which certainly had activity. In fact, I think last week I said that our waiting time was not over.
Yes,
this
you
thing
did.
is still rolling a little bit. And so from that time, we've had some weird things happening also. Taking all that into account, well, they certainly had intelligence and some rumbles that were beginning. They have
Yeah.
deep learning systems dealing with the crust of the earth also, right? Which
Okay.
means they have a very good predictive system. But the earthquake in Turkey deserves a bit more attention because it was unusual. And what I mean by unusual, you can have something that happens naturally on the earth, but it can also be augmented by unseen battles, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if something were to disturb that fault in another place, it could easily ripple over there. When China detonated that nuclear weapon on the ground, it rang all over the place, and a lot of data was captured from that. We're talking way back. This was a long time ago, but it shook the earth underground, and scientists recorded what it actually did, right from a nuclear blast underneath the earth, well deep in a hardened place in the earth. And that was China many, many, many years ago. It caused it spawned several earthquakes by itself, just by vibrations. Well, since that time, they know the mechanism of earthquakes at a very low, consistent frequency, what it would take to agitate the earth, right?
Yes.
And if somebody, and we do have, there are even some machines have done this on accident, right? Caused an earthquake accidentally. We're not talking about some big machines either. We're talking about vibrating in the right spot that would cause an amplification of those waves. And then before you know it, you have tremors or earthquakes. Well, in this case, if somebody were to concentrate some frequencies in that area, right? Or around that area, already having the ground shaking in the first place,
Right.
right? You can always amplify an earthquake. So
So
what
in
I'm
other
telling you is
words,
this:
go ahead. Go ahead.
if we had an earthquake, say somebody had an earthquake of 4.1, right? There are techniques where you can amplify that earthquake, and it'll be a 10.0.
Whoa! No! What? Are you serious?
Yeah, it's not that. It's not that. I'm sure that somebody can. I'm sure earthquakes can be started because Lord knows they have the weapons to do that. But what I'm saying is, when the earth shakes, right? There are, let's just say, people have built things. They can amplify the earthquake
Yeah. So are you saying?
underneath the ground, right? Now, not in every place. And it
Okay.
just so happens that in the Middle East, you're looking at a place that is very old, right?
Yeah.
The structures are made of a specific type of construction technique where earthquakes can really decimate things. So the damages incurred over there were, that was going to happen anyway, even with some small earthquakes based on their construction techniques. But the earthquakes can be amplified. They can be augmented,
So is
right?
it possible that we already know that there's places in the earth? We know where the major fault lines are. We know where some of the very vulnerable areas are. Could weaponry enhancements be planted in areas so that if the natural
Sure,
portion starts, you go ahead and help it along?
sure.
Is that part of a military strategy of some sort?
Well, it's also part of saving. For example, if a big earthquake hit somewhere near New York City, or they thought something was going to hit near New York City, right? You can
Okay.
actually blow a portion of that fault that cause the rock to cave in on itself, right? So there won't be an earthquake.
I see.
So it's also a preventive issue there too. That was proposed back in the 70s. In fact, something happened at Yellowstone in the 70s, and of course that stayed fresh in their minds. Just about anything you can conceive,
Yeah.
it has
Okay.
been built. It's been implemented, but it's been tested, and so that can absolutely happen.
But
Now,
let's,
you take a nefarious person like
yeah.
Putin or some of these other countries, they could easily, uh, for whatever reason, they can easily put their own equipment down in those places and kaput.
Yeah. All right. Now, Mike, as we're talking about this, of course, the 18th of February is just around the corner,
Yes,
and
it is.
that's the next event. I think you said this one could be 7 times stronger than the last one.
7 times stronger. Yes.
What is there any preparation by the government for this that's being put into any kind of procedures, any kind of preparation for this, or are we? Because I talked to an individual who is a member of Department of Homeland Security,
Hmm.
and they just went through some recent training um, in the Washington D.C. area, in the New York area, especially those two areas, on how to prepare for the unthinkable, and
Hmm.
what that means, and the aftermath of it, and the bodies, and the whole situation. So, is there anything being done now to prepare for these events, these 17 events, and especially this one coming up?
Well, sure it is. Everything is being checked and double checked. Basketball, they have, when they prepare for something like that, they have mock-ups or simulations, real-time simulations, and they will actually take equipment, people, and put them like Jade Helm. That was you call that a workable simulation in which they
Right.
were trying to see how troops responded to this situation, that situation, timing, force strength, all these things. And of course, if because if we have another body headed towards Earth, right?
Okay.
They're going to have to be fully prepared to shut down most operations and immediately start up other operations, which means they're going to have a receiving party that, in fact, half of the folks that had know-how back in the 2000s, you can't find them anymore.
Really?
These folks were only 30 years old. They're gone. You can't find them. A bunch of people went missing since probably about the year 2005, 5 through 9. A lot of people went missing. Can't see them anymore. These were reputable individuals, excellent at their jobs. You can't find them.
They just
So what's more
disappeared?
plausible?
I mean,
Yeah,
I,
they're gone. They're gone. They're gone. In fact, you remember all the die-offs that people were reporting, right?
yes.
They would say this scientist is dead, and that scientist is dead, and this microbiologist is dead, and this doctor's dead, and this political person's dead, this, that, and the other. Well, if you had to get people into a hardened facility years before anything happened to get them acclimated to new conditions, how would you do that? Well, one of the best ways to have somebody not come behind you looking for somebody is death, right? Doesn't matter
Right.
how they died.
Well, yeah.
As long as they believe they're dead, you're good to go. And I'll submit to you right now, there are always things taking place where a person dies, and they'll say, well, they died under mysterious circumstances. And here's the truth, though. People can argue all day about how somebody died, but here's the funny part. They never inspect if the person actually died or not. Isn't that funny?
They never look to see. They never.
No, no. They'll argue all day and say, "Well, I don't think this person. I think they killed him, or I think something is fishy here." They don't care what people think, so long as the people believe that the person is dead,
Right.
and then that person is gone. That person is, if it's one of those select individuals that they really need for something, that person is effectively relocated to another facility. If Nibiru whatever people want to call it, if this secondary object is real, that those are long durational preparations they have to take. That's not something overnight that you do. That means there's an entire nation of folks already in place. That's what it means. And the breakdown. Now, what are the signs of this? If they were to have all their important key figures gone already, they would keep communication topside. But one of the signs would be disruption in law enforcement and a disruption in certain military tactics. There'd be disruptions. You would find less and less qualified people running government.
That is what
That's
we
what you would
see.
find.
But that's what's
Yes, it
going
is.
on. I mean, we have
And
crime out
what
the
makes this
wazoo. You
what
know.
makes it so funny, Pascal? We discussed this back in 2000, I believe, 2015, I believe it
Yes, we
was.
did. Remember Jade Helm?
That with a lack of lawlessness would begin to take place, crime rates would shoot
Right.
up, but you would find less and less qualified people in all areas of their
Yes.
jobs, which means civilization topside would begin to decay due to a lack of experience, a lack of know-how, just all sorts of things would start lacking until you hit a point where things really start to break down, right?
Yep.
Now, if they're going to go in their holes, like the Bible says,
Yep. It does
then
say it.
these guys are going to have to go in there long before this thing ever hits, because they're not going to wait until they see it. Once you see it, it's going to be too late. They have to have accurate data. They have to get in place about 4 years before it ever takes place.
So this
So that
article,
means
this article just came out today. This Planet Number 9 article by Live Science, basically saying, hey, we can't see this if it's out there. We can't really see, but based on all our statistical and analysis and gravitational pull, what have you, there could be as many as 20 moons orbiting Planet X or Planet Number 9. And if one of them gets hot enough, we'll see it, which I think would be Nibiru, okay? So there, to me, these were, I mean, and they said it's probably 10 times larger than the Earth. These are all the things we've already known, we've talked about for years. Was this just soft disclosure, a little more soft disclosure for us? Is this code to speak in between other people? But you're right. It seems like everywhere we turn, the brightest minds are slowly disappearing. We keep hearing that they're dead or they've died or they went away or they fell out of a balcony or whatever. But are you saying that's going to be the story? But people are being placed underground. Families are being placed underground. Select individuals preparing for what's coming.
Yeah, they would have to do that 4 years prior to the first, the initial signs.
Okay.
Things that would hit the earth, because you're looking at increased radiation, disease, a change in atmospheric conditions that are just extremely terrible, right?
Yep.
That's what we're about to experience. Not too long from this date. But you have all these conditions that are forming. Even right now, we experience these issues right now. Right now, we're having these same issues, these same things that are happening. This earthquake in Turkey is going to happen 2 more times in 2 different locations. The same, but don't you find this interesting that we also discuss the number of people that would die, right?
Yes, we did.
Now, all you have to do, I'll put this out there quick. It's on your audio, I don't have it. But if you go back and listen to the numbers that I mentioned, like 30,000, 40,000.
Yeah.
You find that interesting that it matches that earthquake. I'm just saying, this isn't fortune telling or anything like that. Some things that happen
Right.
in the earth are purpose to happen, right? They're just purpose to happen. Now, who has that purpose? Well, that's yet to be disclosed, but there's a system coming in, Pascal, that's going to be forced. Right, so the old system is going to have to totally break down and be pushed down.
So you're saying because of this, and let's see if I'm going to get this right. Because of what's coming, because of this binary system and what it's going to do, the old system that we've been living under, this old order that we've been under, needs to be brought into chaos to the point that the world cries and clamors for a new world government or a new ruling class or a new order. And that part of this is, and this has to happen to allow, this has just got to happen because it's going to be under a new order, is what you're saying, one way or the
Oh
other.
yes, it's going to be forced. They're not going to ask anybody, do they want it? This is being forced. And if you take a look around and see what's happening, democracy is starting to fail people.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
That was a big term that we used to use, Pastor Paul. Democracy is going to fail, and people will ask for a brand new system. Right?
Yep.
It's going to be very tough for people to swallow. They're going to see it slowly but surely. It's kind of like having a foundation in a house, but your foundation is crumbling. You don't take notice until your house dips on one side. By that time, it's too late. You're going to lose the whole house. Right? The same thing is happening right now. Everything is speeding up. Government candidates, I'll say it again, we're going to see less and less qualified. You're going to look at presidents across the board. You're going to say, these people just don't belong there. They're going to make these blatant decisions that will be, they're not going to be good for the people, right? They're going to start not listening to the leaders. We will start seeing large scale rebellion against all governments. And that's going to happen very quickly.
Yep.
Now, somebody else will be taking their steps in, right? Things are going to turn quite wacky. And we live in those moments right now. It's not coming. We're living in those moments right now. And it's almost like you can't slow down the momentum, because every time you think one thing is fixed, 12 other things fall apart.
Yeah. Are we going to be seeing the white trains pretty soon? Food?
Yes. Yeah, food. Pastor Paul, the availability of food is going to be largely dependent on how the weather holds up and how radiation is held back. I want you to think of something, that our weather phenomena has increased exponentially as far as the life it's taking, right? We actually have floods now that are taking lives.
Yes.
It's going to get worse. Some of the atmospheric issues that we're about to have, in fact, you're going to start to hear meteorologists talk about not atmospheric rivers, but almost like a flood of an atmospheric change. That's just, they don't know how to figure this out. It's going to cause some very bad issues. This will affect air traffic and everything else, how we do everything. People, I'll say it again, people are going to be terrified at the forecasts. If they say a thunderstorm is coming, people are going to have real fear internally from a thunderstorm because of the sheer amount of rain, right? Because of the sheer amount of lightning. And some of these temperature fluctuations, it's not going to matter if we're in a temperate forest region, arid region. The weather is going to change in all places, right? Then we're going to see a change in the jet stream. It will change direction. That's going to cause some bad issues. Now, all of this is going to take a toll on all farms.
Yes.
Which is why the government bought up most of the farms. A lot of the farms in the USA, the ones that are not struggling, are highly dependent upon subsidies from the government to survive, right?
Yes.
But the government has already purchased many more areas of farmland for themselves. Now, they can do with those farms whatever they want.
Right.
And what they're doing with this GMO stuff is they're shoring up some of the grains to survive higher amounts of radiation, floods, all sorts of things, right? So it's very robust. Half the wheat's already changed. We went through that.
Yep.
What was it last year? They finally passed a bill that was held up because they couldn't introduce GMO wheat into the stores and everything else. So if flour is a bit different and bread tastes different, you might want to double check that label. And to my understanding, some of the GMO products you don't have to label as GMO anymore. So
no, they're saying natural organic processing. Well, what does that mean?
Well, oh my Lord. Well, Pastor Paul, here we go again. You have people, right, that a long time ago, all these fancy terms, it sounds real, like they have etiquette and lots of intelligence using a term called organic. Well, I'll tell you something. If it's not organic, what is it? Synthetic, right?
Right.
I'm not going to eat plastic bread. That term has always troubled me, because if it's everything we eat is organic, truth be told,
right? How can it not be?
We can't eat synthetic stuff, right? So I want you to just think of that term right?
Yes.
But what these powers play upon is the pride of the people. If a person is proud, they invest a lot of money in their education. They don't want to be snubbed by somebody who's not as educated as they are. They're going to use every big word they can. But what they're also doing is helping to dupe the populace. They're not
Yes.
they're not really they're not inspecting the language being used in small terms like that. They just slip our minds. Before you know it, it has no definition, right? It just they can say that the plastic bag that holds the bread is organic, and so everybody goes and they buy it, right? So there we are.
Mike, here's a question for you also. Is it possible that these three unidentified aerial phenomenon, unidentified objects, could they be from Russia? Is Russia also involved in? I mean, they came through Alaska. These last three that we shot down. Well, actually, all four for that matter.
Well, as I said before, it's the CNC of Russia, China, North Korea can be, and Iran can
They're
be
all
handed
one.
over.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
all one.
So if it's like shared intelligence that NATO has, right?
Yep.
If China sends up a balloon, maybe everybody's going to have access to that data who's not part of the NATO alliance. Right? It's
Right.
kind of like that. Some of the other objects, I know that they don't want to tell people what they are, right? And they don't have to. Certainly, if they went down in the water, they don't have to tell anybody what they are
No.
because nobody knows what they're going to recover if they're going to recover anything. But there's a public backpedaling. Because sometimes things are orchestrated at very high levels. I'll give you a major point to this, though, Pastor. There's some very dark figures coming into leadership, right? People will not see them as dark. People are going to see them as very bright figures. But I'm telling you right now, they're dark. And they're going to pull the rug out from under any and everybody's feet who's not really locked into a spiritual life. It's impossible for a person who's not stationary in a spiritual life to understand or even to know who these people are. They're
Yeah.
going to play on every attribute that we naturally have. They're going to make a person proud to make the decisions they make. Uh, it's really going to tear down the fabric of what's left of the small pieces of democracy that are being freely exercised. The entirety of the system will be changed, and it's going to be changed in a very fast, with a very fast method. Everything will be forced. War is part of that, and the threat of war is important also. That's important. June and July, they're going to be very important months because you're going to hear the language of the media start to shift to a whole nother topic that's going to it's going to brainwash quite a few people.
June
And
and
keep in mind,
July.
Pastor, yeah, our this generation that's coming up, right?
Yep.
The generation that's about to step in leadership, they're not like their parents. They're not like that. They're very different. They're kind of disconnected from what a generation like ours fought for.
Yeah.
They don't know about the fight. They don't know about that. All they know is that the generation before them does not know what they're doing and they're messing everything up. And that's the sentiment of most kids when they start looking at the news, because you can hear it every single day. They say, why are they so angry at each other? They need to get out of there. They don't know what they're doing. Right.
Right.
These kids are stepping into leadership positions this year, not next year, this year. And so you're looking at a world that's going to be adoptive of these new kids. These kids will ultimately turn on their parents and their parents' ideologies, right? Because we believe in a very different system. They don't care about force. They're more compliant. They believe in compliance. That's what they believe in, but a different type of compliance.
Yeah.
Not to do what somebody tells them to do, but to live in a world without restrictions. That's what they want. In other words, they're advocating for Sodom and Gomorrah. The young kids are. They just don't know what Sodom and Gomorrah, right?
Right.
They want to do what they want to do and be prosperous doing it, whatever they want to do. That's what you see coming forward. And it's about to go to a brand new level. And as you see policies of governments prop up these things, well, that's it. It's gonna make a lot of people they're gonna turn on the system.
So the
And the system
Bible.
will most certainly turn on them.
So, Mike, as you know, the Bible that prophesied in the Bible that this is exactly what's going to happen: lawlessness, because iniquity will abound, the love of many will wax cold. wars, rumors of wars. Then, of course, all the natural disasters from all the apparently from the heavens that are shaking, the signs in the heavens. We had. Let me ask you a question. We had a blood moon here in Israel. I was in Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee with 57 folks. 2:30 in the morning, a lady wakes up. The Lord wakes her up. She steps out on her balcony and looks out across the Sea of Galilee, and the moon is blood red. It wasn't a full moon; it was a half moon, blood red, and the color even was reflecting on the Sea of Galilee, turning the water red on the reflection. She took the pictures. I put it up on YouTube. We did a video on it last night. There's no lunar eclipse, Mike. There's no lunar eclipse. You're not supposed to have a blood moon without a lunar eclipse. And oh, by the way, what's the odds of us having a blood moon over the Sea of Galilee in Israel when I'm here?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So tell me, I mean, obviously, is it the red dust that's coming in? Is it starting to cause these things? Because it's fulfilling biblical prophecy.
Well, Pastor, we're gonna see a big atmospheric change, and it's hard to rule out anything. Dust is certainly a part of it. Atmospheric change is certainly a part of it. Particulate count increase in the upper atmospheres, that's most definitely part of it. But we're about to be inundated with a much heavier particle count, right? Air quality meters are going to be going off like crazy. They'll no doubt begin to go down. It's kind of like, think about this accident in Ohio.
Yes.
That people had. Okay, I've been snooping around. People are starting to get sick who didn't know anything about it. In other words, they live on the outskirts of that town. They come in from a trip or something like that, not really paying attention to the news. Well, they're reporting problems, symptoms, not psychological symptoms, right? Real symptoms. Not only those, but something's wrong with the water in West Virginia also.
What?
In these
West Virginia?
Yeah. Well, it's not going to stop there, because that certain chemicals they have pretty long life, especially when they're introduced into the soil, and it takes a long time for those chemicals to actually go inert. And so there are weird chemical-based problems happening in too many different areas, right? And we're just seeing the beginning of it. I'll point everybody back to these accidents that we've been having, dealing with North Fork Southern, right?
Yep.
And their little problems with their whatever problem they name, it doesn't matter. It's what's being derailed is the issue with me. This last accident in Detroit. Did you not know that there were two cars on there? They were empty, but they were designated to carry some pretty strong chemicals, but they were empty, right?
Okay.
All these chemical accidents. Here's what I believe. When's the last time you heard that word terrorism?
I haven't heard it in a while. No, I haven't heard it in a while.
You haven't heard it.
No.
Haven't heard it. The only thing you hear about terrorism is the fight Ted Cruz is having within Congress with these hearings about how they're labeling patriotic people as being, homegrown terrorists.
Yes,
that's the only thing you hear about.
That's the only thing you hear. Yes.
But as far as overseas terrorists, you don't hear about it. You hear sporadic stories about ISIS, but you don't hear about ISIS in this terrible way, do you?
No.
You hear about ISIS like they're these shining knights who are about to save the world, right?
Yeah.
That's just doesn't make sense. But you don't hear about terrorism. Now, I'll submit this to you. When you stop hearing about a word like terrorism, right, that's when you have to watch out. It's because the same thing happened in 9/11. Right before 9/11, it was a few years before 9/11, that word terrorism was in the news. But all of a sudden, it left the news, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
You didn't hear about terrorism.
No, we didn't know anything about it.
And then on 9/11, then it was that word terrorism translated into war, justification of war, justification of assets, and a lot of people were behind it. One of the key factors here is every time something is done like that, they need people to support it.
Yeah.
Because if the people don't support it, the people rebel. And if the people rebel and they continue to do it, then that's not a democracy.
No.
Right? That's not what that is. That's a dictatorship. So they don't need that. They need people to believe in a cause. And when they stop reporting on these terms like that, you better believe something magnitude normally happens where they bolster a cause to go in and make the global adjustments that need to be made. And I'm just saying, you don't hear that word terrorism, but you're starting to see signs of things that are happening, just like before 9/11. You're starting to see signs of things that are happening that conspiracy theorists are going to go crazy on. But even they are not associating this with terrorism.
No.
Right now, they're talking about train parts, old train parts, and how that we need to hold the Norfolk Southern accountable for those old train parts. You don't hear anything about terrorism.
No.
Even for the chemical factory that exploded, that was dealing with plastics and petroleum. You don't hear anything about terrorism or anything
No.
else.
So you're saying, well, we've got a border. Our southern border is just wide open. Okay. We know that terrorists. Now, I'm not talking about migrating families from South American, or excuse me, Central American or Mexico, people just looking for a better life. We know they just truly are looking for a better way of life. Okay, but at the same time, we've got terrorists. We're catching some of them now. I mean, they're coming across. If we're catching a few, there's a bunch going across. So these people are being planted all over our society, being shipped and flown into different locations. They're going to try to melt in. They're going to try to assimilate in somehow. These are sleeper cells. They're going to get jobs working in our infrastructure. They already are.
Well, yeah, they already have them.
Yeah.
But Pastor, you remember the reporting about the Spetsnaz troops that people reported on, right?
Yes,
The
I
civilian
do.
sector. They were saying it's a bunch of Spetsnaz troops here. That was back in 2000 and what was that? 2006,
Yeah, about
and
15 years
7.
ago. Yeah.
Okay, then, but that story went away, didn't it?
Yes.
There were also, they lost count. They lost count of 800 sleeper cells in America that were terrorists back then too.
800
They lost
sleeper
count.
cells. How do you lose them?
You didn't hear anything about that either,
No.
did you?
No.
Okay, so we already have a problem. We have a problem, and what they're doing is it's almost like a redirect in it to get everybody's attention in this narrative that they will support some kind of way. They need everybody to have their own personal reason to support what's about to take place, right?
Yep.
So that's when you start. You ask that question. Why am I not hearing this? Kind of like Iran. You're not hearing about Iran too much, except for that internal problem. That was it. You don't hear anything else. And Iran is the biggest player right now between the Ukraine and Russia, believe it or not. They're the biggest player.
Iran's the biggest player in that conflict.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, Mike, we're building up. I mean, you have to admit, the United States and all the NATO countries is building up in Europe big time for
Absolutely.
war. Yeah.
Absolutely. And not just any war, because you will see civilians, something will come about to start to shift the populace of civilians. And
you mean migration, UK, shifting them away to different locations?
You may see that, but you've seen a lot of people immigrate into Germany, and yet you've seen a lot of people who are now displaced in Germany.
Yeah.
You see a lot of people that are trying to get out of the UK, and you see a brand new set of people trying to get into the UK. If you look at some of those movements, well, then you know something is happening here, right? War is not conducted like it used to be conducted. It's very sophisticated now, and people normally get in position, get jobs, and everything else. They become your neighbors. Then they turn. I can't even knock this one, but Pastor Paul, maybe we can cover this later, but there will be a time right here in this country, in America, that people like your neighbors, people's neighbors, are going to be discovered for not being who you thought they were this entire time, right? They'll be fully uncovered. They're going to be quite loyal to a whole nother cause, period. That deserves, but let's just say this, Sad. Even though you have a nice neighbor that smiles and you get along and they do this, that, and the other, when the call is made, they're going to be loyal to their home countries.
Yep.
That day is coming.
Yep.
This day is coming quickly. They're going to be loyal to their home country.
Yep.
They are accommodating. They're nice. You'd never recognize that they even speak more than one language, right? But they will, and it will happen that way because to be honest with you, we dropped the ball.
Yeah.
We did. We dropped the ball through pride, arrogance, a host of things, and we kind of sat back and enjoyed the spoils of our own stuff, so to speak.
Yeah.
During
Yeah,
that time, other countries have been coming into the USA, not illegally though.
Yeah.
We're talking about
Legally.
they have been winning people over.
Yep.
Winning people over.
Converting them.
In this financial time, there are so many people right now, and I know I probably shouldn't say this, but there are a lot of people right now who are being paid by foreign governments to do things, Pastor Paul, right now.
Lord.
Okay. They've been taken care of for about at least 5, 6, 7 years. They have a pretty good connection, pretty good support system going on with these foreign nations. You don't know who they are. Nobody will know who they are until the time comes. And when the time comes, well, it's just not going to look too good in certain areas. And that time will most certainly come. It will most certainly come.
Mike, a question or two here left. June and July. You've brought it up twice tonight. What is it? What is going to happen? Are we talking about this water event? Is this coming in June and July?
No, this June and July. Well, they're going to be very strange days, Pastor Paul. But one of the takeaways of June and July has to deal with the Pentagon and its coordinated message to people. So that'll be the June and July thing.
Is it going to be very disturbing? Are the people going to be upset with this coordinated effort?
I'm sure. I think they're going to think deeper than they have been thinking.
Okay.
I think it's going to start to. It's almost like it'll be a conversation, Pastor Paul, that will likely with surrounding events. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they start setting up for this right away, which I think they already have. They're starting to set up for this. But once this message gets out, you're going to notice that if people aren't grounded in real biblical knowledge concerning Christ, that's very important. And really, honestly, have a relationship with Christ.
Right.
They may have a difficult time. Believing in certain things anymore. It's kind of like there's a brand new set of artifacts, evidence, and all this other stuff
Disclosure
that will be bought out, but it's going to fight a person's faith. In other words, what I'm saying is, if a person right now, if they keep saying in their hearts, well, I got to see something to actually accept it.
Right.
I hate to tell them this, but the only person that's going to show them evidence of anything is Satan himself.
Wow.
He will show you evidence, but the Lord clearly requires faith from us.
So
because faith cannot be that can't be fraudulent. Faith is not fraudulent. That's why it's required. Because if we had to be shown something to believe something, we can be shown something else to not believe.
So do you see disclosure? I mean, when it's talking about
I see
UFO,
a big part. I see the premise of disclosure.
Let me ask you.
Not in the way that people want it.
Okay,
Pastor Paul.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, let's go. We talk about those 3 unidentified objects that were shot down that we're being told we don't know what they are, which is ludicrous. One was an octagon. It had no wings. It had no propulsion. Yet it flew. It was a craft then of some sort. Okay, a small craft of some sort. Are we going to see? I think you talked about this 7, 8 years ago. Maybe you said one day we'll see a craft so big, so huge that people will look up and see this and they will think it's over. The alien invasion. Do we have the technology now to create a craft that can do that without?
Sure we do. There was a guy. I believe it was Theodore Static Lev, but there's a whole different type of propulsion and science behind that propulsion that does exist.
Okay.
It does exist. Now here's what you got to watch for. An object of big size, making no noise and everything else. I got to remind you of something. We do have something the size of a Black Hawk helicopter, right?
Okay.
That makes absolutely no noise. So they have found a way to dampen any sound that an aircraft would emit, right? And then it's not working push system. It's working by a pull system. So imagine that same helicopter, instead of pushing air down to the bottom, right? It's actually pulling itself up and diffusing air coming right out of the bottom going out.
Okay.
So it's not using a push system. It's using a very strange a pull system that negates anything coming after. Because even there's some attack helicopters. I can't give the designation for it. I can't do that.
Okay.
But there's some helicopters. It could be 100 feet over your head. You would not hear it. It could be at your housetop. You would not be able to hear it. You cannot hear it.
It got blades turning.
That way.
Blades are turning.
Yes, it's got blades turning. Parts are moving, but you cannot hear it.
Wow.
Right? And here's the thing. Here's the science behind that. It's just like light. If you had a bright flashlight and somehow some scientist from CERN had an anti-flashlight, you put those two together, you can negate each other. So nobody would see the flashlight because of the anti-flashlight.
Anti-flashlight.
Right. It's just like sound waves. The reason people don't hear in their audible ear all these sound waves is because these sound waves are negated. Right? There's always a balanced frequency, and that generator sitting somewhere in every single state that negates some of the floating frequencies. It's frequency cancellation.
Okay, so
they have learned how to do this with sound.
Yeah, I got a pair of headphones on right now, and they're noise cancellation, so I can't hear anything else.
Right, there you go.
But I can hear you. Okay, so you're saying that that same technology can be used on a grander scale.
There you go.
Okay.
And it's not that difficult. It takes computers, but it's not that difficult.
All right.
Not that difficult.
Okay.
So that's one type, right? But we do have a different type of propulsion that they've had since the 70s. They do. They've had it since the 70s.
70s.
Yes, 70s. In fact, there are certain minerals in the earth that are classified. They're just classified. The minerals are. These minerals have certain properties to them, and they are classified. They're just classified. These minerals under heat, lots of heat, they do something different. They also found out things about human beings, possibilities behind human beings. I'll tell you something. They did tap into the mechanism of faith.
Yeah. Okay.
As it turns out, people have more authority than they think they do. The problem is,
God for that.
on a daily basis, they're exposing themselves to propaganda that says you can be nothing more than what we show you. And so when a person cannot believe beyond the propaganda they have accepted,
right?
And so they run around with limitations, right? It's just like a placebo. How can you give cancer patients a placebo pill and tell them it's radiation, but in fact it's a sugar pill, and they go through all the symptoms of chemo, never having gone through chemo?
I mean, that's
before,
crazy.
But all the symptoms of chemotherapy are manifested, and the person is healed of cancer from a sugar pill.
Right.
How's that possible?
Right.
See, so they know about this. They absolutely know about this. And the propagandists, these machines that we have, the limitations, all the knowledge that we gain, which is why certain knowledge you really have to check and make sure it matches what Christ said. I know that sounds cliche to some people, right? But you're going to find that a lot of knowledge out there, if you're not careful, it will fight directly against your faith. And science, right? Science is good for the discovery of things that God has already created, right? But science can also, if you get too deep into it, science will tell you that you can't do anything unless it's sanctioned by those who can prove it, right? So a lot of people get into science, and because they cannot reproduce it, they'll say it does not exist. Well, guess what? That translates into a person's faith.
Faith
Just
is
because
something.
God doesn't do something for a person right there at that moment does not mean God's not going to do it. And you know what a lot of people do?
Amen.
I have a method, Pastor Paul, I do, because people who know me, they know I get a lot of healings a lot. Now, I'll tell you why. It's something very simple. A lot of people walk around there, they say, well, I'm trying to believe I'm healed and I can't do it. I never, ever do that. I have a simpler solution. Only believe that Yeshua can heal. You don't have to believe that you can heal. Just believe that he can heal you.
Yes. Just believe in Yeshua. Believe that Christ Jesus can do the healing.
That's it.
Amen to that.
Amen. That's it.
Mike, one more thing, just before we go here. February 18th is around the corner. What do you expect? 7 times stronger. That's a big statement. Is the sun
know
going
what's
to blow
already-
up, or what's going to happen?
Well,
here?
it's trickling in, Pascal. It's already, because it's 7 times larger. It's going to have like a, you know how a big
Okay.
wave comes in?
Yep.
They have the smaller wave that comes in before that. So that process is already beginning.
Yep.
Right. I'm hoping we don't have any more chemical accidents in certain areas. But the earthquakes, I have a suspicion about earthquakes and volcanism.
Yep.
By the way, this earthquake, this phenomena that took place in Turkey, it has also affected America, parts of America. It affected parts in South America. It really affected Mexico. Keep that in mind. It really affected Mexico.
Are you worried about San Diego? Are you worried about San Andrea?
Yeah. I'm absolutely. I'll tell you something about that too. When the birds start going away,
Yep.
and now they're not going to do it all at once. It's going to be like
A
life is
gradual.
diminishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll start going away. That's when it's not going to look too good. Also, because it coincides with a couple of other things that I actually saw and went back and looked at later. Well, that's a real touchy subject because of how many people were caught. But when South America continues to have these eruptions, and specifically Mexico is going to be almost tore up by earthquakes and eruptions. When people see that take place, they better count on it, because there's going to be some activity in South America, and that coast plate just won't hold anymore.
Yeah.
And when that goes, fastball, there's nothing that's going to
Yeah.
hold back
Folks,
that fault line from actually cracking.
Folks, if you watch the webinar, Deep Impact, and we have it on DVD now, we can ship it to you tomorrow. If you go and order it at my website at paulbegleyprophecy.com, Mike shows you the map, what he's talking about, these fault lines, these troubled areas, these very serious areas, and you need to see this map. It's incredible. I'm so thankful, Mike, that you revealed that in that webinar. That was so important, so that people could see. And the coast area is the most concerning for us here in America, certainly, because of what it does. Mike, I got one more thing to throw out there before we let you go. I know it's getting late. Next Thursday night, I'm going to be actually in the airplane flying back to America, so I can't do a live show. Can we do it on Friday night?
Yeah.
Instead
We'll go with that.
Okay, let's just
Sure.
same time as always. Let's just do a Friday night instead of a Thursday night.
Okay.
Because look, the wave of injury is going to hit on the 18th. I don't know in the next 7 days what's going to be going on. There's so many things we've talked about tonight that are so critical. We got to stay on top of it.
Yeah, we do.
What, you got any last things?
Yeah, we do.
Anything else you want to throw at me besides June and July? I mean, what else? Is there anything else I need to think about this next week before next Friday night?
You know what? There are some things, Pascal, but that would bring us into a whole other hour of talking. I would tell everybody this. Tell everybody this. Be careful of announcements. Be careful of announcements, and be careful what you accept. Be very careful. If it moves your emotions in the wrong direction,
don't go with it.
Be very careful of it, because there's some things, policies, and announcements coming that are well, everybody will hear it, but just be careful about what you actually, all of what you actually take in. Be careful about that. Run it through a filter of Christ.
There we go. Always run it through Christ. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yep.
Mike, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you. Sorry, my phone wasn't working, but we'll be back in the studio next Friday. But I'll be back in Florida, so we'll take care of it.
All right. Well, God bless you, Pastor Paul. It's always an honor.
All right. My honor's mine. Thank you so much. God bless.
All right. God bless.